What's going on, everyone? Nick Filato of Big Blue View here to dive into the tape of Alabama tackle Evan Neal. He's a prospective first overall draft pick who was a consensus 5-star recruit out of high school. Started games at right tackle, left guard, and he was the Crimson Tide left tackle last year. Neal's super long, gigantic at 6'7", and he carries his weight insanely well. I literally have no idea where he hides 337 pounds, which was his weight at the combine. Although he didn't test at the event, he's expected to have a phenomenal pro day. He ranked number 1 on Bruce Feldman's freak list heading into the season, and dudes his size shouldn't have the foot quickness that Neal possesses. There's a lot to appreciate about Neal's tape, but he's not a perfect prospect. He has issues that need to be addressed, and we'll get into those shortly. But let's start with some reasons to love a player like Evan Neal. Evan Neal is number 73 right here, and let's talk about his pre-snap posture. It's fundamentally sound, has the ankles and the knees ahead of the hips, and he has all the weight on this post leg, the inside leg, and this is going to allow Neal to drive off of that leg, gain the necessary depth in his set, cover the ground, cut off the angle of wide pass rushers, and not provide the pass rusher easy access around the edge or through the inside, which I feel like Neal does a good job of. Just framing his blocks overall, and this is also going to allow Neal to use the ground to his advantage. You want to generate power through the ground, up through your legs and your back and your core, and use the firm, stable entity known as the ground to not allow defenders to go through you. And you can see that right here on his post leg and how he drives off of that post leg, creating ample explosiveness and allowing Neal to get to the landmark he needs to execute his assignment. Watch. Boom, 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 boom. Those are quick feet right there. Just covers the ground, cuts the angle off, engages the pass rusher. Now, gives up initial contact, gets hit with the long arm right here. But Evan Neal could just sit back on his hips. He has a pretty good anchor. Honestly, I thought his anchor was going to be a little bit better in the totality of all of his film, but it's not a bad trait of his by any means. And he gets both of his hands on him and just kind of holds him up right there. But guys this big typically do not have the kind of foot quickness that he does, and the explosiveness. You can see the explosiveness out of his stance right here. And it starts from that pre-snap phase, and this is something that Neal does well. That pre-snap phase of him exploding off of that inside foot. And then it's just a DPI right here. I believe that's Jamison Williams. Absolute stud, which you'll see through this video as well. Here we got Neal here. It's a little bit later at the start. Does the same thing. Covers the ground. Only this one, Neal gets his hands inside of this poor pass rusher, and good luck at that point. We did Charles Cross a little bit ago, and Charles Cross was very passive with his punch. He was more of a catcher than a dictator in terms of getting his hands inside. Neal is not scared. Neal uses his hands well, timing, placement, and you can see here. And he varies it up too, which I love. Right here, lands that outside punch right on the chest, right as the Razorback is going to engage, and then the grip strength. Look, he can't get away. He's trying to. Neal's moving his feet, staying in front of him, and just drives him out of the scene. Good rep from Neal. Here we go again against the Razorbacks. This one he punches a little bit earlier here. We could see Neal leaning a bit here at the waist, which could be foreshadowing for stuff you're going to see a little bit later on in the video. This guy tries to go with a speed rush, and Neal stops it right in its tracks. Look at that hand placement right there. Right on the breastplate. The other one is on the outside, but he's not holding it all. He's just guiding him up the pass rushing arc, and then he's refitting his hands and resetting his hands and adjusting to what the defender is doing, which you love to see. Because it's reactionary quickness, it's adapting on the fly. You can see right there the hand fighting that goes on. Because Neal makes that initial contact, pass rusher kind of panics, tries to go up the arc. That's what Neal's trying to have him do. So he tries to soften the edge right here, the pass rusher, and tries to get around. So Neal readjusts his hands, takes that hand off, and says, okay, well, I'm going to come around and try to gain the outside portion of your shoulder. Good on the defender to combat that with his outside arm, but Neal realizes that. As the defender swings his arm downward, he just comes right up and underneath and then just stays in front of him. And once Evan Neal that is, has his hands on you, you're done. And then you'll love the finish too. And that's something that Evan Neal does. He finishes pretty strong most of the time. There he just chucks him to the ground. Bryce Young holds on to the football a little bit too long here and ends up taking a sack, but that's not on Evan Neal. Here we go again. Arkansas pass rusher. Start from the beginning. He knows he's screwed probably right off the jump because he doesn't really have a plan. He's trying to read the situation, and Neal's just right in front of him. Just double hand punches him, stays with him, latches on, and then Bryce Young finds 12 for a touchdown. Here we are against Florida. He gains a lot of depth on that first step, and then you see how he has to shorten up that second step because he realizes what the pass rusher is trying to do, and it's not going to be a wider type of angle. He's trying to initiate contact early on, and you don't love when an offensive tackle is leaning at the waist, engaging a defender with his hat higher, where the defender's winning the leverage battle and his feet are together. But Evan Neal has the footwork and the strength to kind of get away with this. And he does in this specific play. But ideally, when you're going up against top-notch defenders, you might pay for that. But he sees and reacts to the pass rusher and what he's about to do, and then gets his feet set underneath of him. Again, quick double punch right there. Right as the pass rusher is trying to do some sort of speed move, Evan Neal says, nah, son, and just punches the midline, and just readjusts, stays in front. Watch the feet, too. The feet stay with him, always adjusting. See that striking point right there on the breastplate. Look how the pass rusher's helmet just kind of ducks downward, and you can see how he gets bench pressed off Evan Neal. And Evan Neal gets that inside arm kind of underneath the inside armpit of the edge rusher, and then kind of tries to keep that outside arm on the outward shoulder pad. Then he moves it to the midline, and the pass rusher is stopped. Here we go against Arkansas again. This one's a little bit more patient here. A little bit more, I'm going to wait to see what you're doing. Once you present yourself, turn your chest, show your pass rushing move. I'm going to punch, I'm going to latch on, and you're done. That's another thing I like that Evan Neal does right here, and you can see how he does it. Pass rushers who are coming in on Evan Neal naturally has a high center of gravity, and he has balance issues, which you'll see later in the video. But when he gets his hands inside like this, and you're trying to lower your hat and win with leverage against him, he's going to lift your center of gravity up and essentially kind of just pull you up towards his face mask, which you could see there. Because once those hips are lifted, how are you going to generate any power through your hips and through the ground to run through an offensive tackle? And Evan Neal knows this. So in order to just stop some of these pass rushers, he just lifts you up. And in doing that, you're not going to be able to uncoil your hips through the contact that you're going to provide as an offensive tackle. Ends the rush effectively. We have Neal over here. We're going to see a bunch of different strikes from Evan Neal. He shows aggressiveness, patience. He's not predictable with his hands, and he's constantly refitting and retooling his hands through a rep to give an advantage. You could see, this is B.J. Ojulari right here, Azeez Ojulari's younger brother. He attempts to kind of use his stutter, and then watch. He's presenting his chest right here to Evan Neal. Evan Neal, he has his hands low, he's ready to attack, but he's not necessarily committed to attack until he recognizes this, and that's good processing. He sees the chest, sees how it is exposed, and then just strikes. And look at Ojulari and how he just gets bolted backwards right there by that long arm right there. And you can see how Evan Neal also steps and has all that weight now on that catch leg, on that outside leg, and he just punches. So he's going to have to redirect his hips here. He has the hip fluidity to execute that. Now, if this didn't work, he may provide an alley in a very, very advantageous defensively route towards the quarterback, but he's able to pivot, get those hips flipped, and then just ride him up the arc, because Evan Neal, as I like to call it, and I've heard other people refer to it as this, has some sort of gravitational pull, because he's so freaking long that he can locate pass rushers who are so far away from him and kind of pull him into his body and his frame and away from the quarterback. And you can kind of see that right there. One more time. Big punch, jolting Ojulari backwards, ride him up the arc. Here we see the pass rusher. He seems uncertain in his rush. Evan Neal just two-hand strikes him, gets the chest, pulls him close. No dice for the Razorback. One more time. Doesn't really know what he's doing with his rush, has his hands really low. Evan Neal is ready to attack, ready to pounce, strike, gain chest, you're done. Here against LSU. Ojulari again. You can see the hand fighting throughout that rep with B.J. Ojulari. Now this is a 5 technique, so it's outside shoulder, not a wide rusher. Evan Neal frames it well, and then he strikes again. He strikes early. He's not overly patient with this. I feel like he does a good job timing it up. Gets that outside hand on the breastplate, inside hand on the inside shoulder, and then pushes him up the arc, kind of throws him off kilter. Ojulari's trying to bend through that contact, and Ojulari does a good job kind of breaking the wrist of the outside arm, but at the same time, I'm thinking Evan Neal might have wanted that because he could just refit it right here and gain even better access. But you can also see Ojulari keeps on fighting, and you can see how Evan Neal just keeps refitting. He's relentless with that, and all while keeping his feet moving and staying right in front of Ojulari, cutting off any angle to the quarterback. Here against 99, this is just a really good rep. This is a 3 technique, so Neal's got to step down, and he does. Tries to go inside the B gap. Neal strikes kind of on the outside portion of the outside shoulder, right on the midline, and just stays with him. People might be like, well, he's holding there. It's, if you're not blatantly holding, there's holding on every play. If you're not blatantly holding, and maybe somebody would say that that is blatantly holding because you could see the jersey kind of get tugged there, I'm not too worried about that type of holding there. But I do like how you see Evan Neal just constantly refitting those hands, going underneath, not allowing the defender to separate from him. Don't allow the defender to create separation. Evan Neal does a great job not allowing that. Mechie, you got to catch that ball, bro. But it was tough. Now, Trayvon Walker, this is somebody who could possibly be a top 10 pick. Raw type of power, also raw in technique, but you could see how he jolts Neal back here a little bit with the long arm. Kind of gets him a little bit there. Look, you could see Evan Neal's center of gravity just rises up there, but then watch. He tries to snatch and trap him. Snatch and trap is when somebody tries to long arm you like this, so you break the wrist right at the elbow, and then you fall on top of him. Now, he doesn't fall on top of him, but look at Trayvon Walker. His effectiveness in this posture is not going to be great once that contact was broken, and Evan Neal was able to do that. So, strike. Evan Neal's not in a great position right here. Evan Neal has to adjust on the fly. He has to have a plan for this, and Evan Neal typically does have a plan. So he goes right after the elbow and then just breaks the contact there, forcing Trayvon Walker to fall forward, and then Bryce Young gets rid of the football. See Neal on the left side, another double hand punch, strike, pull close, and you can see how he gets pushed back a little bit, but he just sets back on his feet. And then you could see how he's just kind of uncoiling his hips and absorbing that contact and not allowing himself to get pushed back anymore. Young gets rid of the football. See him over here against Jeremiah Moon. This is hybrid linebacker edge rusher. And you could see how Moon really explodes low to high and tries to run through Evan Neal. And Evan Neal gets popped a little bit on contact, gets both those hands inside, just sets right back on his hips, and then extends his arms and keeps him at length a little bit there, while also kind of holding on to the jersey. Inside, won't get called. Here he's going up against another Florida Gator. Look how smooth that pass set is. Boom, 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 boom. And he gives up initial contact a little bit, but it doesn't really matter here. Now against Trayvon Walker again. He doesn't even pass that. He just frames the block, and you could see why he does that. Because before the snap, Trayvon Walker kind of walks inside a little bit like he's possibly going to slant inside here. So Neal anticipates that, stays right in front of him, keeps him at bay, makes contact. You can see how Walker tries to go for that long arm and just back him up into the quarterback. And you can see how Walker gets a lot of power through his lower leg drive there. But Neal just stays in front of him and allows the football to be released. Here we're going to see Neal handle a couple stunts. This is something I feel like he did a solid job at, not an excellent job at. There were times where, right here he does a good job, but there were times where he would stick with the penetrator way too long and allow the looper to kind of get around him. But here he does a really good job, and this is Trayvon Walker, who is the looper. You can see how Neal just kind of tosses the penetrator inside, makes contact with Trayvon Walker, and I love this right here. Walker's going with that long arm again, so what is he going to do? He's going to break that wrist like we saw just a little bit earlier. Breaks the wrist, and look at Trayvon Walker's center of gravity just go downward. And yeah, he might have a little bit of the jersey here. Again, not going to get called. It's on the inside. Boom. That is a violent chop of the hand to break contact of Trayvon Walker. We see him again. This one, pre-snap, Neal's paying attention. Sees that he drops into coverage, so he knows that there could be somebody coming from this direction and that this individual might be blitzing, which is going to allow the guard to possibly go and engage him, which he helps the running back with. So Neal's on top of that. Neal strikes aggressively, kicks out, steps back down, redistributes his weight, kind of on a linear plane, allows Jameson Williams to catch this and just go to the house. This kid is insanely fast. It's very unfortunate that he tore his ACL because he is just a very good wide receiver, as you can see in a lot of these clips. And here again, against Georgia. This one, you can see what I was talking about, referencing a little bit before. He kind of hangs on him just a little bit too long, and then he gets enough of this guy to not allow him to make a huge impact on the play. But that is one thing that I did see. sometimes he stays too long on that penetrator, the guy slanting inside. I referenced Neal's balance issues before. We're going to see a lot of them right here. Now, you see that he makes contact, and watch how he's leaning at the waist. Now, we saw that in some of his successful plays, but it doesn't always result in something positive for Evan Neal. He's putting way too much of his weight on the edge rusher, which is allowing for a possible inside spin move, and we could see Evan Neal fall to the deck right there. Honestly, with Evan Neal, I was a little surprised when I saw how often he hit the deck. He hits the deck more than you would expect for somebody who is being talked about as the first overall pick. There goes Jameson Williams. Now, I don't think this makes him a bad prospect or anything, but it's definitely something that has to be addressed, the balance issues. It's difficult for somebody with a high pad level. I also see a lot of push-pulls, and I'm sorry, this clip right here is a little bit sketchy for some reason, but you can see that he gets engaged right there. Both of these players, they have about the same hat height, but you can see how Evan Neal gets pulled downwards. It's the push-pull that defenders employ on Evan Neal. It's effective more than you would like. And then the defender gets his hand on the football. Here he is going up against Zach Carter. He goes in nice and low, explodes low to high, but again, he's leaning a little bit. The chest is well in front of the toes, and you don't necessarily love that. Now, you can generally explode through that, right? But you have to bring your feet with you and coil those hips through the contact and use those feet to recenter yourself while also using the ground to your advantage like we referenced before. Where's your momentum going to go? Your momentum is going to go downward. Look at the way your body is angled. It's exactly what happens here. It doesn't result in anything for this play, but you don't want to see a star tackle getting pulled to the ground like that. Here against Trayvon Walker. You've probably seen this one going around Twitter a lot. It's ripped violently to the ground. So this is an issue that he's going to have to overcome and prove that it's not a liability in the NFL, because teams are going to know this about him, especially when you're going up against someone who's 6'7". That's physically imposing, but even people who are physically imposing have weaknesses. And right here, he gets hit by this long arm move, and you can see how he kind of gets lifted up here. You don't love to see that. Okay, you want to be able to handle these kind of power moves, and you can also see why. This individual is edge rushers trying to win speed to power, and he converts his speed to power here. He's trying to win around the edge, but like we talked about, that gravitational pull of Evan Neal is a lot. So what he does is he just kind of puts a lot of weight on this inside foot and then explodes through that inside arm to lift the momentum of Evan Neal up the pass rushing arc, since his momentum was heading in that direction anyways. Again, didn't matter for the play, but you don't love to see this. Here we got him going up against B.J. Ojulari. And he gets ghost technique. Now, you don't see this all that often. This is a good adjustment by B.J. Ojulari. I'll give him that, because remember before, B.J. Ojulari had his chest exposed, and what did Evan Neal do? Boom, he attacked it. But now he got kind of lulled into it here. B.J. Ojulari, this is a great setup by him. He's lulling him into this, and you can see Evan Neal's about to latch onto that chest. He thinks it's exposed, but then he just ducks right underneath it. This is a very well-timed play, kind of the chess match of the edge rushers against the offensive tackles. Punch, ghost technique, gets into the pocket, just forces a little check down to Jameson Williams. And right here, this is more of a play against Zach Carter, where Carter times the snap up really well, and Evan Neal's a little bit late out of the snap. Now Neal gives him that punch right there, gets his hips flipped pretty quickly, and is able to push him up the pass rushing arc, that gravitational pull we were kind of referencing before. So he's a little bit late off the snap there. Let's check out Evan Neal's ability to move bodies off the line of scrimmage as a run blocker. Here we have Evan Neal against a 4-eye technique who's attempting to penetrate the B-gap. Evan Neal says, nah, son. Just stands him up. Has to block it down. Try to get that hip in front of this defender's hip. But instead just kind of wins with power here and just bullies him. Ends up getting that hip across. You can see how he has control of the back right there and the breastplate. This defender is in no position to make a play on the football, but Alabama had an unsuccessful run. We got Neal against Zach Carter. And I like this play because he has to kind of, again, get those hips to the inside of Zach Carter and then allow that B-gap to kind of open up. And Carter does a good job kind of going inside here. Makes contact outside shoulder of Evan Neal. Evan Neal uses that inside arm and then flips his hips and positions himself, and then gives Brian Robinson just a little bit of a crease to run through. This player ends up making a play right there. But you can see how he positions himself, and that's what I'm looking for here. He doesn't get a lot of push here on Carter. Carter's a good football player, though. You can see how his feet are kind of in the way, but Brian Robinson has the footwork to get around that. But good play by the second-level defender. And this is a short yardage touchdown here. And look at what he does to 99. I'm just going to drive you out of the play. You can just see on these down blocks, Evan Neal has that power, and you also love the leverage he uses. Remember, this guy's 6'7". He's going low on 99. And he's driving through. And he's allowing Brian Robinson to score a touchdown. Here we have Neal. Good base. You can see butt low. His objective is to seal this edge defender inside. And watch how he does it. Tacks first on the inside and then just flips his hips and drives him inside. Nakobe Dean cannot cut off the angle. Number 6 picks up a nice gain there. Let's watch the block one more time. Explodes off. Power step. Engage, flip his hips. That's smooth right there. Not everybody could do that, especially at 6'7", 337 pounds, probably like 360 right here, ish. Just gets his hips flipped and drives through. Almost like he's blocking a feather there. No knock on Channing Tindall. But Evan Neal is very, very powerful and a much bigger player than Channing Tindall. Probably outweighed him by more than 100 pounds on that block. Here's a power gap block right here where they're going to pull. Play side guard, a little bit G lead. Evan Neal's going to block down on the, looks like the 4-eye technique. So he has an advantageous angle here, but you can see how he just does it and just stops him. There's no separating from Evan Neal here. You can see the punch, gets that hand inside. Right there. Right on the breastplate, just drives, stays in front of him, uses his length exceptionally well. Now we're going to see him pull right here. Evan Neal, backside tackle is going to pull in this power gap RPO. But they throw, but watch how he finishes right there. I'd love to see that. Here he comes. Boom, hits 27, drives him into the ground violently. Here we're going to see a deuce combo block between the play side guard and the center. Now, watch how Evan Neal finishes it at the end. And he ends up taking out number 27 too. That second level defender. Now, I don't know if that was on purpose or what. Even though one of these guys was supposed to come off of this block and climb and locate one of these pursuing defenders, they take out both. But you can see that finishing strength right there. Now, again, there's 2 guys blocking there. Just keep that in mind. But you can see how Evan Neal has the finishing attitude and mentality. You see it right there again. Evan Neal just driving this dude off the ball. And this is stuff that Evan Neal has, man. He has that finishing mentality. He's not scared to drive his feet through somebody's face. And he's a good run blocker who takes up a lot of space. But now we're going to see some of the negatives with run blocking. And you guessed it, it all comes back to balance and high center of gravity. Right here, Evan Neal gets clubbed to the ground. Now, he's not even that high here. I just don't think he anticipated this from Zach Carter. Again, somebody who is probably going to be an early day 3 pick, who is kind of a defensive line edge type of tweener. Underachieved, I guess you could say, at Florida, but then had a really, really good senior season. He just gets clubbed here. But his momentum, he's stepping downwards on the zone run like he's supposed to, but look how he's leaning. Leaning too much. His feet aren't with his chest, and good football players are going to take advantage of that. And he just gets clubbed and thrown aside here. Robinson makes a solid run out of it. Here we got Neal against LSU. Thrown to the side. You don't love this. Now, he was supposed to be the backside blocker on this play. The running back, Robinson tries to cut back. But you can see how like his pad level just kind of rises here, and he doesn't really look too enthused or anything. He's driving his feet, but it's just like la da 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 da. And 53 makes him pay. Just kind of stacks him up right there, creates a separation, gets his eyes on the running back. You can see he's looking. What's going on? What's going on? All right, I'm just going to throw him aside. And that's not necessarily something you love to see. And Neal, I think, knows he messed up there. Here, got Evan Neal. He kind of blocks him right into the play. Now, again, ideally, you want, in this type of block, when you're on the backside, you want to get your far hip towards the near hip of 44. When you have a 4 technique over you like this, or a 4-eye, which is a little bit more difficult, or even a 5 technique, you want to cross his face and not allow him to be a pursuing defender from the backside on a run from Brian Robinson here, but he can't get his hips there, and he allows 44 to kind of break away towards the play side. He tries to drive through. 44 does a good job kind of keeping Evan Neal off of him. And then he just presses. He lowers that outside shoulder into Evan Neal, leans into Evan Neal, and then just rushes towards the play. Now, again, I think he's a good run defender, but these are little tweaks that I've had going through his film. Now, here we see Evan Neal just kind of get tossed. This is another deuce combo block right here. Evan Neal makes initial contact. The guard is seeing if 9 is going to slant outward. He doesn't, so he helps Neal right here. And 44 gets his hands inside of Neal's chest. And you can see Neal kind of moving his feet. His pad level is still a little bit too high, and he gets tossed to the ground. Like thrown to the ground. Not ideal. Here we got Evan Neal again against Florida. And Zach Carter. Zach Carter just tosses him to the side. And this is a little RPO action right here from Alabama. It's going to be another double team block. And he knows it's a double team block, but still, you don't want the defender to get his hands on you like that. And Carter does a really good job getting his hands on the first block and then shielding himself from the second block and anchoring himself down. So if this was a run, these other two defenders would be able to tackle the running back while two offensive linemen are occupied with Zachary Carter. But look, Evan Neal gives up that chest, but leans way too far into the block, man. Just leans way too far into the block, bending at the waist. That's not ideal technique. Here we see Evan Neal. The sustainment of block sometimes when he kicks out in a space like this, it's not great. Now, you're going up against a much smaller defender, a more athletic defender, too. It's a Georgia speedy defense that he's going up against. But you can see how when he engages, he gets inside first, but number 4 can kind of sidestep him, and then he's just leaning, and he's not balanced in the attack. And that's a difficult block when you kick out in a space like that against a smaller defender. I get that. Still thought it should be highlighted. And here, this is Evan Neal against Arkansas. They were running power gap where they were pulling Evan Neal from the backside. Something he might do in the NFL. And I think Evan Neal is a fantastic athlete when he's moving linearly. He's very, very explosive when he's on a linear plane. But when his lateral agility is a little herky-jerky. Now, he's a little herky-jerky here. Again, we got to keep in mind how big he is. I think that's to keep it fair. But he goes to provide pop-on contact on this individual who's engaged in the block, and he doesn't really get a ton of movement there. The guy anchors down and absorbs it well. Kind of squeeze technique type of technique used by that defender, even though he's already engaged with the playside tackle, which could have been a miscommunication between the two tackles. But he's a little herky-jerky in his movement there. It's not the most smoothest thing you've ever seen, which, you know, maybe you come to expect that from somebody who's that big, which I think is fair, but again, something I wanted to acknowledge. We have one more play, kind of similar. What I do like is he keeps it tight. He keeps that pull nice and tight to the asses of his teammates. Pull, locate, gets the pop. He kicks this guy out nicely, which is good. 91 makes a good play, but that's not on Evan Neal. Kicks him out. If 91 wasn't there, that could have been a nice hole. So I wanted to highlight this play as well. It's still a little herky-jerky, but he covers the ground well, and he keeps it nice and tight, which is good technique. Provides the pop on contact. Evan Neal is a fundamentally sound offensive tackle prospect with a high floor. He's incredibly long, has good, smooth footwork, and he provides power as a run blocker, and is a good run blocker overall. I understand why he's being discussed in the top 5 of this draft class, but he's not a generational talent at tackle. He has to learn to play with more balance once contacted. He bends too much at the waist and leans into defenders too often, providing them that opportunity to counter, which I feel will be exploited at the next level a little bit. I personally wouldn't mind seeing him as a New York Giant at 5, but he's not ranked as highly as Andrew Thomas was for me coming out of Georgia. Still a great option, and I'd welcome him to assist Thomas on the Giants' offensive line. Anyways, guys, this is Nick Filato for Big Blue View. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, rate, leave a comment. Head on over to the site. We're cranking out draft content, New York Giants content all the time. That's bigblueview.com. And please also just be safe and take care of each other. Bye-bye now.